Okay, so if you're watching this, you're probably knowing I had issues with LinkedIn Live. And before I went LinkedIn Live, I wanted to record everything in case I had issues. For those of you that have been following some of my LinkedIn Lives, every week kind of is a different challenge. And because this was such an important event for me, I really felt like I had to be prepared. So this was my being prepared. And if you're watching it, pretty good I was prepared, right? So let's get down to, why coaching shift workers is different than coaching somebody on a traditional 9 to 5 job. This is a question I get asked a lot, and maybe not in exactly those words, but once we start having the conversation, it's like, I had no idea coaching shift work was different. And I really want to highlight this because I think it's important. One of the things I never realized is that really most of the health and wellness information that's out there is designed for a 9 to 5 lifestyle. So, those that don't have a 9 to 5 lifestyle, it becomes very difficult to find healthy habits that fit their lifestyle. So, this is really kind of opening that up, opening this conversation, and that as health and wellness coaches, we can better support our clients and having them make healthier changes. So let's talk about why we have shift work. Well, it's pretty simple. We have shift work because we work in a 24/7 world. You want Amazon to come to your doorstep on Sundays. That's going to happen because of a shift worker. You need to go to the hospital in the middle of the night. There's going to be doctors and nurses and technicians there because they're shift workers. So it's really important. And yet, I can't tell you how many times in the field I have heard a health and wellness coach, a doctor, a nutritionist, a dietitian, a fitness trainer saying, well, if you want to be healthy, you might need to rethink your job. And I think that's the worst thing that we can say, because one of the things I've realized in working with the shift working communities is that they have passion for their jobs. The interesting thing was I came from a corporate health coach background. And one of the things we talked about in corporate health coaching a lot was passion and purpose. A lot of times it was lack. They didn't know they had this job because this job paid the bills, but they lost themselves in finding a passion or a purpose. Well, shift work is different. A lot of shift workers, not everybody, but a lot of shift workers are passionate what they do. Think about your pilots and your nurses. They love what they do. My diesel mechanics, they love what they do. They wouldn't change it for the world. They have their passion, they have their purpose. But filling in the health and wellness of the nutrition, the sleep, the exercise becomes difficult because how do they support that along with their passion? So, if you've ever told a shift worker that if you want to be healthy, you might want to rethink your job, I ask you to rethink that statement. And maybe it's not about them rethinking their job. Maybe it's as health and wellness professionals, we rethink how we give advice. And that's really what this is, because shift workers, yes, some of them might be doing it because of just keeping up with the kids, or maybe having the few extra dollars an hour makes a difference for them. But a lot of people are doing it because they're passionate about it. So I just want to break down something really simple, and it's basically about what is shift work. So I want to talk about the different shifts, because a lot of times we think about shift work and we think about the nighttime shift, and there's so much more than the nighttime shift. So first we have our day shift. This is our traditional 9 to 5 hours. You get to go to work during the day, sleep during the night. Then we have our night shift, which is what a lot of people think when they think about shift work. They think about the person that's working from midnight to early morning and that works overnight and has to sleep during the day. But we actually have a shift in between there, and that's called our swing shift, our second shift, our evening shift. And it really starts in the evening after day shift goes home, and it's the shift between day shift and night shift. So a lot of times it might be from like 5 p.m. to 11 or whatever the actual time is, but it's that nighttime shift that covers between daytime and the night shift. Then we have something what we call split shift. And this is a lot of times seen in our first responders and things like that. And this is the shift that actually gets split up. So you might do 4 hours in the morning and 4 hours in the evening, and then you have time off in between. And then we have rotating shifts. So rotating shifts basically rotate through day, night, and evening shift. on generally some sort of pattern. So you might work 2 days day shift, 2 days evening shift, then you're off 2 days, and then you work 2 day night shifts, or 1 week day shifts, 1 week night shifts, and 1 week the swing shift, whatever the rotating pattern is, but they're rotating through that. And then we have something that a lot of us are familiar with, but we don't often think about it as a shift work, is on call. A lot of us in the corporate environments, we're familiar with an on call shift. Maybe we're having to cover weekends or cover evenings to make sure China's covered when they come back to work on Monday and things like that. So these on call shifts can happen maybe once a month, maybe every few weeks. And basically, you're on call. So if someone calls, you're on. It could be at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It could be 2 o'clock at night. And this is where a lot of times, especially if you're a corporate worker, maybe you work a traditional 9 to 5 job, but one weekend a month, you're on an on call. So that can throw off your sleep cycle. It could throw off your nutrition. It might throw off just time with the family. So a lot of times it requires you to be flexible in some area. And this is where we see some challenges just when we work these shifts. And one of the things that was the hardest for me to understand was seeing that a lot of the health and wellness information out there is designed for a 9 to 5 lifestyle. And when I first found this out, it kind of like punches you in the gut. Because once you see it, it's very hard to unsee it. I read articles now and I'm like, yeah, what about the shift worker? And it's very difficult. We're going to talk about that a little bit. But I want to go into why shift work, we struggle a little bit. So one of the first things is circadian rhythm. We are seeing so many studies coming out about how important circadian rhythm is for our overall health, for our metabolic issues, for sleep issues, for our immune system. Yet it's very difficult for rotating shift workers or night shift workers or people on call to keep that circadian rhythm consistent. Sleep is huge within the shift work industry. I used to joke that a lot of my shift workers would tell me they would sleep when they're dead. And the scary thing is, if you don't focus on sleep, you're more likely to have complications that might end your life earlier than if you didn't. So it's something that we really need to look at. And when we talk about shift work and sleep, and I'm just going to give this as an example for how it's really designed for a 9 to 5 workforce. If you go to any sleep improvement websites, the CDC, anything, Google, improve sleep. Number one that comes up is go to bed at the same time every night. If you're a shift worker, especially a rotating shift worker, impossible. You can't even get past step one. So that becomes very just heavy for somebody that's struggling for sleep and they can't even do step one. And a lot of times as health coaches, we would say, okay, let's look to see what you can do. But if you don't have that coach behind you and you read an article and step one you can't do, a lot of times you're going to throw your arms up and say, well, healthy doesn't work for me. And that is something I have heard over and over within the shift working industry, is that healthy doesn't work for me. And I want to change this narrative because I think it does. I think we have to be creative. We have to think outside the box. And as health coaches, I think we're the perfect people to do it, essentially. So sleep is super important, and it's very difficult for shift workers to get consistent sleep. Meal planning and proper nutrition is another huge, huge part that a lot of times, while everybody else struggles with it, shift work struggles a lot more. And I'm going to give you an example for this one too. When we talk about meal planning, if you're working a night shift and maybe the only time you get to really see your kids is on the weekend, do you want to spend Sunday meal prepping instead of going out and playing basketball or going for a bike ride with your kids and bonding? No, none of us want to do that. I'm not doing that. I'm not willing to sacrifice my relationship with my family so I can make some soup or salads to have during the week. So we come up with these sacrifices. And we feel like we have to sacrifice one for the other when we're a shift worker, where if you're a corporate, if you work a 9 to 5 lifestyle, yeah, you might have some more time on Sundays to meal prep because you still have the evening with your kids. You could still go to their soccer games. You could still take them to practice. So it becomes more difficult. So again, when we're telling a shift worker, oh, how important nutrition is, and don't get me wrong, it is important. But when we're telling them to spend Sundays meal prepping, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it because family is too important to them. So we have to think about things. Exercise is another one. You think about exercise, oh, we go after work or before work. Sometimes that's really difficult for a shift worker. Or maybe they've been on their feet all day and the last thing they want to do is go run on a treadmill or lift some heavy weights because maybe they have been lifting all day long. And we have to really take in account of what they're currently doing to understand how we can improve their health and wellness. So that brings me really to the crux of this on how, as health coaches, we can better support our shift workers. Well, the first thing is to understand the difficulties within shift work. If you are working with a shift worker, ask them about their shifts. You know, I have a freebie on my website, and I'll give you the link. If you go to lauratenbrook.com/ask, we're going to go over some of the top questions health and wellness coaches ask clients that might be exclusive, that might not include our shift working professionals in having a quality health coaching session. And let me give you a perfect example. What time do you go to bed at night? Common question. I've asked it hundreds of times over my years as a health coach. Yet if I ask that to some of my shift workers, they're going to give me one of two answers. Depends. And it's short answers. You know, one of the things with shift workers is they don't have time for bullshit. They don't want to explain. They're very direct and poignant. And if you're asking a lot of questions that makes them have to explain their lifestyle, they're not. They're going to put you in the boxes. Healthy doesn't work for me. This person doesn't understand me. And they're going to go back to just living their lives and really feeling that healthy doesn't work for them. So it's really important we're asking questions that makes them inclusive in the conversation. We talk about this in motivational interviewing, is that compassion, that acceptance, you know, that partnership. It's important that we are fully understanding. So if you don't get that, well, it depends and kind of cuts you off answer, you're going to get a very basic answer. Go to bed 9 o'clock. Oh, great. You go to bed 9 o'clock every night. That is wonderful. You must be getting 8 hours of sleep, but you're probably not going to say that. You're going to think that. And yet they just gave you the answer to what time they go to bed at night when they work day shift. They might not explain their shifts. They might not explain the rotation because it's just going to be too much for them to explain to you because this is something so different. So how can we rephrase this question to be more inclusive of our shift working professionals? Well, first, you can just ask them, are you a shift worker? My intake form literally says, do you work shifts? And then tell me what kind. So you can flat out ask them. So if you know somebody that's a nurse, an airline pilot, a flight attendant, works in healthcare, ask them. Or we can phrase the question, tell me about your sleep schedule. This now opens that conversation to say, well, when I'm working day shift, I actually have really good sleep. My issue is on the night shift. My issue is on swinging between the day shift and night shift, or maybe when we rotate from night shift back to day shift. It opens the conversation and allows them to feel like, hey, maybe you know I don't sleep at night. And this is where we really want to have these questions. And, you know, like I said, if you go to lauratenbrook.com/ask, we go over some of these common questions as health coaches. We ask and we rephrase them to be more inclusive, to open those conversations, because this is important when we're talking about how we can be better health coaches for shift workers. It's about understanding their lifestyle. You know, understanding their job. What is the tasks? Are they lifting a lot? Are they moving a lot? What's their average step count? And things like this, that we can have this conversation, because it allows our clients to feel more heard. And that's really what we want. We want our clients to understand that, hey, you know, your lifestyle might be difficult, but we can work on this together. We can figure something out. One of the things, I had a guy years ago was not going to make changes to his health and wellness. And we talk about this a lot of times in the stages of change. However, I want to go into that a little bit deeper because I think for a lot of shift work, they felt like change is not possible. So for this guy I'm talking about, he had a really high A1C level. His glucose level at the time of the health fair was high. So we knew that monitoring that blood sugar was important. He needed to go see his doctor. He needed to get this further looked into. And when he came to me at the end of the health fair, because I was the health coach at the end to kind of put into place everything he's learned from his biometrics, what the nurses told him. And then he came to me to kind of understand, okay, how can I take all this and put it into play? So he came to me and he goes, yeah, he's like, healthy doesn't work for me. This isn't going to work. And when we had this conversation, I really felt like this conversation wasn't going anywhere. He was not ready to change and he was not going to change. So we had a few minutes left in our session and I ended up finding out that he liked camping. We're a big camping family. So we started talking about camping. And he started telling me about his ages of the kids and how important the time camping is. So I just happened to say, because I can't turn off being a health coach sometimes, and I asked him, I said, you're telling me how old your kids are and how important this time is for you, but not to go back to, your health. I said, but let me just leave you with one thing. If you were not to make this change and monitor your blood sugar, in 5 years, where do you think your health will be? And he kind of thought about it for a moment. He's like, well, if I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, my mom had diabetes. She ended up losing a toe and dying early of heart disease complications because of her diabetes. And I kind of reiterated that to him. I said, so you're telling me if you don't make these changes, within 5 years, you might lose a toe and die early? I said, how are you going to enjoy camping with your kids and your grandkids? The same thing we just had a conversation about. And it kind of stunned him for a moment. And he goes, it's pretty stupid, right? He goes, okay, give me one thing I can do. And that's when the conversation changed. So I think a lot of times when we talk about somebody that's in a stage that's not ready for change, I think when we're talking with shift workers, we need to pull at it a little bit more, because are they not ready to change, or do they think change won't work for them? And that's really important, because a lot of times, like I said, shift work has felt so left out of the health and wellness conversation. They don't see how they can be healthy, because everything as health and wellness professionals, as articles, as research has shown, this is how you do it if you live a 9-to-5 lifestyle, not if you're a shift worker. So I think it's important. And for those of you that want to know a little bit more about me, I kind of will give you a little bit of how I got into this. And if you want to learn more about health coaching and how you can better support health coaching, how you could support our shift workers in health coaching, go to lauratenbrook.com/courses. I offer a free course, and then there is a paid course that goes a little bit more in depth and shows you how to put everything together. We have some really cool stats that you can use for your clients. And it's really about building that relationship to allow shift workers to feel like, hey, they understand me. I don't have to explain it. So go check that out. I'll put the links wherever I post this. I'll put the links there as well. But let me tell you about a little bit about myself. I have been a health coach for, now nearly almost 13 years. I have worked mainly in corporate wellness, and I hired a business coach one time and I said, okay, help me niche down, because I too really struggled finding clients. And I should say struggled finding clients on my own. As a corporate health and wellness coach, I worked for vendors, and eventually I wanted to go out in my own private practice. And that's where I really struggled. That's where the niche coach came in. And I came from a tech background, so I assumed I was going to corporate wellness for tech. And my coach asked me one simple question: tell me about your favorite client. And I rattled off this paper mill that I worked in and these guys in these diesel mechanic shops and this and that, and how great it was to work with them, and how I loved the challenge of, their lifestyle and how we could be more creative and finding healthy habits that fit them. And I remember my coach looking at me. She goes, "So why are you going into tech if manufacturing was my favorite?" So I really spent a lot of time in manufacturing, understanding the lifestyles and all types of manufacturing, anything from manufacturing paper to high-tech pharmaceuticals and dental implants and all kinds of really cool things. And I got to see so many different clients because I was still doing a lot of vendor work through these manufacturers and things like that. And over the years, I found that, okay, manufacturing, shift work goes much further than manufacturing. I had nurses contacting me. I had road crews contacting me. I had transportation contacting me. And that's when I really started building into, okay, we're supporting shift workers. And that's really how this has all come about. So I have talked to probably thousands of shift workers at this point in all varying industries to really understand the difficulties. And that's actually how I got into this. And it wasn't because I worked a shift. I was a nurse. I wasn't a nurse. I actually worked in the tech field. I used to design software for FDA submissions. So not even in the area that I was, but I did grow up within a blue collar family. Um, it- I rode quads and fished and, spent lots of times in the woods. So I'm into classic cars. So a lot of this stuff relates to some of my manufacturing guys when I talk to them. We could talk about classic cars. We could talk about, going for motorcycle rides and things like that. So there's that relatability. And I think that's important, that you don't need to be in this and have to work a shift job, but you need to have some type of relatability. If you're a nurse and you're looking for a niche, nurses need health coaches. Our healthcare workers are so at risk of leaving and health issues as well. We talk about that in the course. They need you. So if you're interested in really looking at a niche that is so needed, shift work is it. It's about understanding that, having that empathy, and everything we've learned from stages of change and motivational interviewing is exactly what we're talking about in these things. So go check out those courses. If you want to connect with me, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Laura Timbrook. You'll see me. I'm there. It's me. And let's connect. Let's have this conversation. And if you want to learn more, every week I put out a newsletter with all kinds of tips and tricks and research. So go check that out. You can sign up for that on my website as well. So I hope you guys are enjoying this. Sorry if LinkedIn didn't work, but now you got all of this here, and we're going to put it up in a couple spots. So I really thank you for taking the time and learning about how shift working health coaches is a little different than 9 to 5.